That morning, that dreadful morning, Alan awoke with a start, and backing down next to him was an engine he had never seen before. The engine was clearly of Midland design, and looked rather sad. "Good morning," the engine said politely, and Alan replied in kind. "Do you know anything about the accident?" Alan asked, and the Midland engine looked worse still. "Know anything about it?" he said miserably. "It was my train that was hit from behind, by a goods train. I've spent the night clearing the wreck up with the breakdown crew, and one of your V3 engines." Alan couldn't understand. "But the only fast goods was Herbert's," he said, puzzled. "And Herbert didn't make it back in time." "So I heard," the Midland engine said, "but the foreman here re-rostered another engine to pull the train." Sir Ralph was wide awake as well, and keeping very quiet. "All I can say is, they got the poor engine on a flatbed and took him away sharpish," the Midland engine continued sadly. "But there wasn't much left. Look, they're bringing his tender in now." Alan did not want to look, but when he did, he could think of nothing to say, think, or feel. Just emptiness. For there, between two old trucks, was an older Eastern tender, with faded green paint, battered, and quite alone. "I'm so sorry," the Midland engine said to Alan, who looked away. Sir Ralph hesitated, then carefully moved forward out of the shed. "Don't worry," he said to the distraught Midland engine. "It wasn't your fault. Get on home, your friends will be worried." The Midland engine puffed away sadly. Sir Ralph wanted to stay and talk to Alan, but his early train was due, and he puffed out of the yard, despondent. And there, in the quiet of that yard, on a siding, stood the battered Eastern tender, alone and silent. The weeks passed, and the battered tender disappeared. When exactly, no one knew, and nobody wanted to find out for fear of something yet more terrible. The yard had two new engines, one to stay permanently, the other on loan. The first engine was called Tavish, and he was a Northern goods engine of class J39. He seemed aloof, but he was a hard-working, amenable chap, pulling the local goods trains. George was on loan from the Midland region, and outwardly was very grumpy. But he did his work without fuss, and kept Nigel company. To Nigel's delight, he was a cricket fan, and the two tank engines grumbled into the early hours, day after day, about dropped catches, bad umpiring, and bad sportsmanship. Alan found himself alone constantly, and did his best to stay away from the yard as much as possible. Then one day, in early October, as the weather began to change once more, Alan found himself back in the yard, with all the engines present. "What's going on?" he asked Nigel. "Why haven't you all gone to work yet?" Nigel smiled knowingly. "The foreman's given us 5 extra minutes," he said. "He said we might want to see this." Alan was stumped. "See what?" he asked, but as he spoke a loud, shrill whistle blew from the junction, and everyone fell silent. Then, crossing the points, and backing towards them from out of the morning haze, a blue tender appeared, followed by a blue engine who whistled shrilly again. Alan could not believe it. Could it be? It was not, however, Stephen the Green engine. The engine which backed down next to him, to a chorus of cheers and whistles, was Stephen the Blue engine. "Good morning, young engines," Stephen said, and beamed back at them. Alan was speechless. We all thought," he began, but Stephen interrupted. "It's nice to have a foreman who knows the value of a decent engine," he said. "Do you like my new paint?" "My dear Stephen," Sir Ralph said, beaming, "you look absolutely perfect! Why, I must have a wash down. And you too, Alan," he said, giving Alan a rare smile. "After all, we engines that wear the express passenger blue of the British Railways must stand clean together." "Och," Tavish murmured to Stephen, rolling his eyes. "Perhaps you wish you'd maybe stayed at the works."